Welcome back. I hope you had a nice lunch break, and I hope you enjoyed the colorful lunch, the healthy, colorful lunch that was there in the hall. Now, I would like to welcome the chair of the next session to the stage, the session of Climate and Health, Shaping a New Agenda, Upcoming Results from the WHO Pan-European Commission on Climate and Health. And please help me welcoming Fredrik Lindencrona. He is a psychologist and co-initiator of the Inner Development Goals. Fredrik, stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. It's an amazing honor to be back in Iceland, a place I really feel starting to feel like home. I'm Fredrik Lindencrona. I'm leading on how we can develop the inner to get the outer to happen through the Inner Development Goals. But first and foremost, here today, I'm here with a truly special opportunity and a very honoring opportunity to get this year's awards winner, Katrin Jakobsdottir, and amazing change makers, Sandrine Dixon de Cleve, soon up on stage. You're also going to get another man, an amazing man, which is not me. Bill McKibben is going to give us a video address in the beginning. But first of all, thank you, Iceland, for taking the responsibility to bring us together. Thank you, Prevent NCD, your Young Action, for really making it possible. I don't think it could be a more important moment to meet together to really stretch out, show care, affection, and connection together for the challenges we are all taking seriously every day. How do we redefine success in a time when both people and planet are under pressure? That's the core of the question that we're asked to address throughout the thematic part of this work. Actually, if we're honest, many of the systems we operate doesn't necessarily address the question best by being fixed. We really seriously need to start with redefining what we want them to do. And maybe that's not the systems that can deliver what they're supposed to do. I really took it seriously with the conversation about caring. Most care happens, obviously, not in formal institutions. Less care, you felt, was happening there. And that's a serious democratic problem, I think. So, with that, one of the conclusions I've been made throughout the whole set of days, we cannot care for what we're not connected to. We cannot care for what we're not connected to. And I think that will also be the format of our reflections, because connection is one part of the work that the WHO Euro Commission on Climate and Health is really about, according to my opinion. Connecting human and planetary health, people and place, short-term and long-term, eons and lifetimes. So I guess that is our core. I also think we have to start looking at the intersectional positive outcomes, triple, double, quadruple dividends. If we do stuff in the right way, the right outcomes, loads of things will benefit at once. So that will get us into what I think is very interesting, regenerative well-being, where people can build planet, planet can build people. So one of the leading thinkers that led on that track for a very long time, an honor to have on film, Bill McKibben.
Hello, friends. It's Bill McKibben. Boy, do I wish I was there with you in Reykjavik. It's one of my favorite places in the whole world. In fact, I love all of Iceland, and I bet there's still some cross-country skiing to be done up at Ísafjörður and so many beautiful, beautiful places. I'm on the Pacific this week giving a TED Talk, of all things. And it's caused me to be thinking, I think, on some of the large scales that you guys are thinking there too right now. So I'll just say a very few words. Some of you may know that I wrote the first book on what we now call the climate crisis, what we then called the greenhouse effect, back in the 1980s. And I'm afraid that the sad news is that all the things we were predicting then are now happening, and we see their toll in fire and flood, and we also start to see their toll in deep systemic damage to vital parts of the planet's most basic physical systems. The jet stream, which draws its power from the difference in temperature between the equator and the poles, is getting stuck in high amplitude positions. The Gulf Stream and the other great currents of the Atlantic that, among other things, make Iceland the beautiful paradise that it is, are flickering and faltering as fresh water pours off of melting Greenland and changes the salinity of the North Atlantic. These are huge, huge, the most macro scale possible changes, but of course they're reflected in the most micro scale too, including in extraordinary damage to individual human beings, sometimes very directly, people caught in storm and flood and fire, and even more often indirectly, people who breathe the smoke that comes from these things. A new study in Nature just 2 weeks ago talked about 80,000 deaths, most of them in Europe, attributable to the enormous plume of wildfire smoke from Canada and the burning forests in 2023. And at a more basic level, all of this damage is deeply related, of course, to the combustion of fossil fuel, which comes with its own attendant enormous immediate toll. We think 8 to 9 million people a year die, 1 death in 5 on this planet, from breathing the combustion byproducts of fossil fuel. So wouldn't it be nifty if there was some way to stop burning that fossil fuel and in the process stop burning up the planet? And the good news is, and I really do think that this should help inform how all of us think about this now, is that in the last 3 or 4 years, that thing has finally emerged. We crossed some invisible line where it became cheaper to produce power from the sun and the wind than from burning coal and gas and oil. And the minute that that happened, we finally had a scalable weapon for the first time in the climate era. And so now the desperate task is to figure out if we can scale it in time to beat back the worst of these changes. I think pretty much all else that happens in the climate fight is commentary at this point. I think the deployment of sun and wind and batteries in rapid order is the tool that we have around the planet. And as you know, it's starting to happen. Its only question is pace. And right now, there are things that are slowing down that pace. It's kind of you to even be willing to listen to an American for a minute, because, of course, my country is at the heart of trying to slow down that transition and minimize the danger and prevent action. On the other hand, and entirely unintentionally, and in many ways quite tragically, I fear America is also at the moment managing to speed up that transition in profound ways. I don't think there's anybody who over the last 7 weeks watching the disgrace in the Persian Gulf who hasn't concluded that one effect will be a rapid desire to get off fossil fuel as fast as we can, if not for reasons of climate, if not for reasons of health, then for reasons of economics and geopolitical security. Everything is pushing us in this direction now. Only the fossil fuel industry trying to hold on to what it has and the inevitable inertia of existing systems are providing the friction that are keeping us from going as fast as we could or should. And so I would suggest that one of maybe our great task is figuring out how to overcome as much of that friction as we can, as fast as we can. It is very easy to look around the world right now and feel a little hopeless. But there are signs that both our authoritarianism crisis and our climate crisis are beginning perhaps to show at least cracks where we can put a hand in and begin to leverage, exert some leverage. And make no mistake, the authoritarian crisis and the climate crisis are deeply linked. As long as we depend on fossil fuels that are only available in a few places, then we're going to be dependent on the people who control those places. Sunlight travels 93 million miles to reach the Earth, but none of those miles are through the Strait of Hormuz, which should give us a clue right now about where to be headed. I am so grateful for the work that all of you do. The list of speakers at this conference is spectacular. People whose work I have followed, studied, and in some cases worked side by side and gone to jail with over the years. And the fact that you are doing this at this time simply couldn't be more important, and I can't wait to hear more about the results. Thank you so much for what you're about.
So we now have this unique opportunity to get two amazing women on stage, Katrin Jakobsdottir and Sandrine Dixon de Cleve. Welcome up. Here, yeah. You can sit like two sisters here in the couch.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yes. Can we lie down?
Yeah, you can. And someone's going to travel far, so maybe you can have an extra rest before,
Yes, I
Katrin.
will fall asleep now.
Take your chance. So I would want to start with the quote that Hatla was giving from your amazing Excellency, Vigdis Finnbogadottir. If the world can be saved, it will be women who does it. With the friendship, support, and help of men. So you guys are going to lead on this, you already are leading on this, together and individually. And let's start with this. Just a quick reflection on Bill's input. You want to go first, Katrin?
Absolutely. Well, I really like this kind of final moment when he talks about the cracks, hopefully, in the authoritarian crisis and the climate crisis, because it's all part of a bigger picture, right? And what we have been seeing is that the climate issue has been sidelined in the last few years. Other issues have been, been much more central in the geopolitical debate. But at the same time, this crisis is such an overwhelming threat. He mentioned the ocean currents, the AMOC, that we have been focusing quite a bit on here in Iceland because the Gulf Stream is what makes this country inhabitable. But there are other climate tipping points around the world, and there are also the obvious effects of the climate crisis that the climate crisis is already having on people's health and on food security and on water security. And the problem is that this is truly global. So, for example, what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic.
That's right.
It's affecting the whole systems around the world. I was in India last year, and they were describing how melting ice in the Arctic actually affects the monsoon system, which is the backbone of Indian food production. So this is all interconnected.
That's right. Sandrine, what's your reflections?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, first of all, it's incredible to have a message from Bill. He's such an unbelievable champion in the area of both environmental protection, climate change, and also fossil fuel phase-out. And I think he brings in all the different elements that are so important for all of us to think about in terms of joining the dots. I mean, here we are talking about a well-being economy. In 2 weeks, not even 1 week, many of us are going to Santa Marta in Colombia to build on the incredible Brazilian roadmap in the COP negotiations, which sadly was not adopted, on a fossil fuel phase-out. But when he talks about the fossil fuel phase-out, he keeps on reminding us of the incredible links between burning of fossil fuels and greenhouse gas emissions and fires. And then you think about smoke from fires, and then you get to health. And the interesting thing about both well-being and obviously joining all these dots is that they are systemic. And I think what's really important now in our community is we increasingly understand that none of this is siloed, even though our ministries are silos, our governments continue to be silos. But when we talk about well-being economy, we cannot move away from a decarbonized economy, from a circular economy, from so many of the conversations that actually are happening inside of ministries. And so I think the beauty, and we're going to move to that, in terms of the work that I was very blessed to do with Katrin as one of the commissioners, was the realization that today, as we are seeing the pushback, and Bill mentions the pushback, we have to figure out what are those, as I said yesterday, acupuncture points or entry points where we can bring in the system's fallout or the collapse, but make it human. Health is one of those key entry points.
Absolutely. Sandrine mentions that work, and I must also say I feel very blessed to have been able to work with her and the rest of these amazing people on the Commission, because it has really been a kind of deep dive process. This is my first, this is not your first, but it has really been a process where everybody has contributed. We have had so many, deep conversations with experts around the globe, even though it's a European focus. And I think actually, and that's why the final words of Bill also inspired me, I think actually people are realizing the severe effects of climate change on human health, not just planetary health, which is obvious, but also the effects on human health. And I think and truly believe that this might be a new entry point for many people into the climate discussion.
Excellent. So maybe for everyone, just a quick one. I have two questions. One is just a brief information of what is the Commission, because not everyone may know everything about it. Quick one, Katrin. But also for both of you, I would imagine, both have not a lack of asks for being engaged in things. So what made this feel like that important strategic opportunity that you actually choose to spend your time on right now with competition and other things, right? Because that's interesting. What's the promise that actually have given you?
So first, very shortly, what are we talking about? We're talking about a Pan-European Commission on Climate and Health, which is an independent commission instigated by WHO Europe, the regional office of WHO in Europe. But it's an independent commission with commissioners from around the continent. So that has been truly inspiring, all of them with vast experiences in policy making on health, on climate, maybe on both. So this is our project. It was launched here in Iceland last June, and we are actually presenting our recommendations in May in Geneva at the World Health Assembly. We have a chief scientific advisor called Sir Andrew Haynes, professor in London. And it has been a very kind of dynamic dialogue between people who understand government, who understand administration, and who understand science, and how we can make sure that our decisions and our policy making is built on solid scientific ground, but is also doable and implementable for politicians who, being a former politician, I can say, we never know when we are going to leave. So it's often very complicated to implement long-term policy making. So that was the goal. And what I hope to see is that policymakers around the continent, and hopefully around the world, will actually be able to make use of those recommendations.
Right. How was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think how do you decide, first of all, is very key. And I'm someone who I'm incredibly curious, and I so love to learn. And this is one of my problems because I have my hands in far too many pots. But the incredible people that were brought together on this commission under Katrin's leadership, and also the leadership of the World Health Organization, was one of the reasons. But I'm going to give you also a little bit of a rebel reason, which is that in the very beginning, in the very first meeting, we heard of, obviously, the pushback that the World Health Organization was getting, and the pullout of the finances from the United States. And there was a moment where we weren't sure the Commission would go ahead. And Katrin made a big push to keep the Commission alive. All of us are working pro bono, by the way. This was not a paid commission. And I felt that at this time, when one singular country was creating such disruption, the decision and the desire by the World Health Organization to continue to talk about climate, to say that climate impacts were fundamental to understand and are impacting people's lives and livelihoods, standing up for that as commissioners and coming together, and then leading the unbelievable hearings that we had with local authorities, with hospitals, with social workers, with experts. I mean, I've never seen such a broad range of hearings that we held, and also representing 54 countries. We're not just talking the EU.
No.
It was phenomenal. Really an incredible process. Super proud to have been part of it, and super proud that all of us said, sorry, we believe in this issue, we're standing together, and this was a little bit our rebellion against what was happening, and the gutting of the funding in so many of the incredible UN agencies that we saw.
Yeah.
Is there any particular lens, Sandrine? I mean, you were one of the 11, I imagine, and then you have in the chair. Is it some things that you have yourself felt that this is the unique contribution I can make to this?
Yeah, in fact, there was a very unique contribution. Two of us, Enrico Giovannini, who we heard yesterday, and myself, at a certain point realized that one of the chapters that was missing was on Beyond GDP. And joining the dots between the incredible indicator work that we were a part of and this health and climate report. And so we then brought it in to one of our final meetings, and it was accepted by the World Health Organization and Katrin and Andy as one of the new chapters that we should actually co-create. So we immediately developed some of the thinking, the recommendations, and put that into the final report. There were other areas, of course, in terms of my background, both in climate, but also having worked in manufacturing sites, et cetera, which I feel I was able to bring in. But I would say that that was one of the areas that probably I most contributed to.
Yeah, well, I agree with that evaluation. I also think, you know, because the pushback we're seeing, it's not coincidental. So I think what this commission did, we dived into the fact that we are seeing all this dis and misinformation on climate change and on health, and how that is being distributed on social media around the world, special groups even being targeted. We also dived a little bit into an issue, and I know Professor Anna Gilmore is here at this forum on commercial determinants when it comes to climate and health. So this kind of context that we are working within was very kind of prominent throughout our work. Because, as I say, nothing happens for a coincidence in these things. You know, when we see a pushback on gender equality and climate, it's because someone is pushing back. Yeah.
And I wanted to add also that we've gone down a similar path to the reflections that we've had in the well-being economy discussions, in the sense that when we talk about health and climate and health, we were all very concerned, and in fact, many of the experts we interviewed brought up the mental and physical health impacts. So we do see a lot of synergies. Also, what has been interesting was the link between really making the health community change agents in this area. When we spoke to hospitals, social services, health services, what they were all saying is how important it was for them to feel that they were part of a bigger community, to also see how we can enlighten so many other hospitals, social services of the impacts coming from climate. What type of knowledge exchange, data exchange do we need? And so it was very interesting to see that, again, across the 54 countries, no matter who we were speaking to, this need for more data, data exchange, building of communities is fundamental so that we could build resilient communities to future shocks and stresses.
I'm thinking, and just drawing from the beautiful panel just before on the Knights or Knights of Love, a trauma happens, people come together, they're innovative, they're allowed to explore things, right? There's absolutely something similar here, right? So the facilitation that you can do is, of course, amazing from the Commission. And then there is loads of other people also who needs to get going. We're going to get to there, but actually my question to you is, because I've often found that we do not come together over divides when we should. Like climate is one of them, where we could do much broader things. And the beautiful element of bringing health and the health world and the well-being world into it, it's fantastic. But I'm really interested in if you draw from that, I know that you're not fully there with all the things, and that should be saved for the WHA, but take us 10 years ahead in time. And now you're going to get a second to reflect. Give us some glimpse of how a day in a life of an Icelander could look differently. Give us an idea about maybe where can we go? Somewhere in maybe the eastern parts of Europe, Sandrine, you can take, or another place. Just some glimpse of what could potentially be the experiential difference.
Well, I think, as I said, we all make decisions on how society should be built. And what I think is crucial is that we see, if we look at climate and health in context, then what, positive health action often is also positive climate action. So if I look at a day in the life of an Icelandic person in 10 years, it might be, for example, easier to travel between places without using non-renewables, even in public transport or in an active mode, on an active traveling mode, cycling or walking, if the infrastructure is there. So that's just one tiny decision, very, very kind of pragmatic, Yeah. Because if we think about our lives and our societies and how they are built, we should ask ourselves, are they actually enabling health? Because we usually talk about health from the point of view we are thinking about hospitals and what happens after you are in a hospital. But we need to think more about what happens before and how we enable health in our lives. And I think for every government and every policymaker looking at the cost of the health systems, they should be focusing on exactly this.
I agree. Sandrine?
Yeah, completely agree.
Well done.
We have now so much data on the cost of inaction that exactly as you've pointed out, we can now substantially integrate that into policymaking. The question is, do we have leaders that are ready to look at it? And I think that's the key question. What I find interesting in your question is the reality of it. If it's the next 10 years, I think we need to be really realistic of what that looks like.
Yeah.
So one is we need to put in place alternative futures so that we are moving in a 10, 20, 30-year perspective that is demonstrating what specifically do we need to do differently in order to stay within the planetary boundaries. So that's the alternative futures element. And I think that over the next few years, if we don't do that correctly, if we don't build a narrative of possible alternative futures of hope, then we will stay anchored in the doomsday. The doomsday will get harder. Sadly, I think we need to understand that we're going to have to hunker down for the next 10 years. You don't stop glaciers from melting immediately. No. They are melting, which means we probably will already see the AMOC, which is what we're already starting to see, and the impacts of the AMOC. That does mean that in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see parts of Eastern Europe getting much colder, even Northern Europe getting much, much colder. The seasons will be completely disrupted, which means that the growing of our food will be disrupted, which means that access to food will be increasingly disrupted. If we have more conflicts like Hormuz, we will also see continued disruption, as we're now seeing in terms of our energy sources, fertilizers, food, etc. Now, the beauty of it is don't lose out on a good crisis, right? Can we tap into this crisis in order to create the change that we need? And that's where I think that if we can build up the courageous leadership that we need now by bringing in different communities and really enabling those communities to speak out so that we have more democratic processes. And many of us are now talking about new governance models because many of our governance models are broken. Talk about this is the moment to go beyond GDP so we can start to place a value on truly what matters. And we start to look at our financial system, which is also getting totally blown up by, as I said yesterday, those tech bro feudalists who are all talking about more profit for the individual rather than the broader wealth distribution. You know, we are at that tipping point of complete irrationality where we're now seeing leaders starting to think, okay, this has gone too far. And that is the moment now to go out there with the foundations that many of us had built, the Beyond GDP offering, the new financial offerings, the thinking about debt cancellation, which is what many of us are talking about, the thinking about still building resilience within our infrastructure because we know that we're going to get hit. So let's not be stupid. Let's not forget that we have to adapt while we mitigate. And so you need to do that all at the same time. It sounds incredibly complex. I love it.
Exactly.
I think it keeps us alive. Right. It makes us think. You know, often when I talk to people, they say, God, it's so hard. And I said, well, what the fuck did you think life was about? I'm sorry.
That's right.
I mean, what is it? I mean, we're on a couch, but do we want to be a couch potato? No. I'm really feeling like we have to remember there's a hell of a lot of black in order to understand the white. And there's a lot of gray area. And that's just what life is. And so let's cry, let's laugh, let's bitch, let's do whatever. But let's get up and do something.
Be there.
Yes.
And I think that's super important. And I'll maybe close with this because I heard this again from Jean-Marc Monnet, who's a good friend of mine and I'm working with, who's the grandson of Jean Monnet, who had the vision for the European Union. And he reminded us that one of Jean Monnet's quotes was, why is it so many people want to be somebody rather than do something? I prefer to do something.
Agree.
I seriously would have missed my chance if I didn't get the last word for you, Catherine, for the this year's winner for the Together with Nicola Sturgeon.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you so much.
So get us, if you can just give us one thing, which is leadership is all about attention and where you put that. I want people to think about how can they attend to working with unusual collaborators. Can you say something about what's your advice? How do you make that work?
Well, very shortly, because I led a government of 3 very different parties for almost 7 years. We managed to collaborate. I truly believe that if you just focus on the human essence in all of us, you can work with almost everybody. And we need to think like that, because what I'm worried about is, in fact, that deep polarization that we've been seeing growing, these ruptures that are really unnecessary because we don't want to see the human core in all of us. But that's really the key to collaborate, see new things, learn new things, understand that we're not all the same, but still there is such a, there is such deep, we are so deeply related, all of us. So this is maybe the most important thing right now to achieve results for all of humanity.
Thank you, both of you, so much. And have a safe trip.
Thank you. Thank you.
And have a good
Thank you.
rest of this day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.